The formula for most budget phones is to pick one flagship level feature and then make all the other features mediocre. The OnePlus Nord completely breaks that formula, picking no flagship level features, and that makes it a really confusing device. The question is, did OnePlus nail it with this new approach, or did they create a well-rounded disaster? My name is Jacklyn, and welcome to my OnePlus Nord review after 2 months of using it. Normally when I use a device, I pop it out of the box, I pop my SIM into it, and then I use it for a week or two before I feel really confident to give you my full review. That was not the case with the OnePlus Nord. Since this phone doesn't specialize like the Poco phone or the Pixel 4a, it's not as clean cut, and it really needed more time to be integrated into my daily life before I could tell you whether or not to buy it. And throughout this video, I'll illustrate why. Oh, also, thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Talk about an A1 ad placement. I'll tell you more about them later in this video, but let's start with build. Okay, so aesthetically, I am in love with it. The blue is totally my vibe, and the branding feels really minimal and intentional. The glass back feels great, and the slight curve not only makes this phone feel really thin, but also super comfortable in the hand, and it really just adds to the vibe of everything they did here was super intentional, and I'm a fan of that. So right now you may be thinking, Jacklyn, you just said that this phone isn't like a flagship and doesn't have any flagship level features, but this build looks and seems pretty flagship. But there is some doom and gloom here, kind of, and it's the fact that this isn't all glass and metal. So, while the buttons are metal, the actual rails are plastic, and that actually isn't really that big of a deal. Like, I feel like people are kind of making it a bigger deal than it is. Before I knew that they were plastic, I couldn't really tell. The finish that they put on them is really convincing, and the fact that it has high quality glass on the front and back also sells that more premium feel. I actually think that the buttons are a bigger issue even though they're metal. They feel a little bit more flimsy, they're super thin, and the notification slider also doesn't feel as good and as tactile as it does on like the 8 or the 8 Pro. But the plastic rails definitely don't feel like the plastic back that the Note 20 has, for example, where you can easily tell it's plastic. Full review of that phone coming soon, by the way, so definitely subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell if you want to see that. But I think that OnePlus did cut some corners with the build here, but for the most part, they were the right corners to cut to get the price down. The one thing that I'm not in love with the build that I feel like they shouldn't have cut the corners on is the speaker. So it's a mono speaker, which means it's not only really easy to cover up, but it also doesn't sound great. So it does get to a decent volume, but it's tinny and I don't know, it just doesn't sound like incredible. I never look forward to listening to anything on this phone, which is kind of disappointing because I do use my speaker on my phone all the time. It's functional, it's not incredible. Something that is incredible on the phone though is the display. So initially I was like, all right, this is like the flagship level feature of the phone, but it's not. They have cut some corners here again to drop the price. And the main one is resolution. So it is a fast refresh rate display, which is epic, but it only is 1080p, so it's lower resolution than like a lot of the flagships. But as you may remember, some of the older Samsung phones that had high refresh rate would cap you at 1080p. So I don't actually think that that is that big of a deal. The other thing that is not really a huge deal either, but maybe it will be to you, is viewing angles. It's definitely a little bit more limited. You get some rainbowing and like a blue tint depending on how you look at this phone. Like off-axis viewing angles aren't as good as some other phones that I've tested. That said, I'm actually a really big fan of this display. OnePlus is really known for creating smooth phones, and a big part of that is touch response and also refresh rate. And putting a 90 Hz refresh rate on this phone is a really good look. It feels a lot smoother than like the Pixel 4a. So I think that that was a good place to spend their money. It definitely makes a difference in daily use. And we'll definitely hit the Pixel 4a versus Nord comparison later, but just to dip our toes in real quick, the Pixel 4a definitely specializes on its camera, so it has a pretty epic camera experience. And the Nord doesn't. I'm gonna test out the front-facing video and audio from the OnePlus Nord right now so you can judge it for yourself and let me know in the comments below. And while I do that, I'll tell you about this video sponsor, NordVPN. So NordVPN is a company that you've probably heard a lot of your favorite YouTubers talk about, and it's really because they're an incredible virtual private network provider. Now, why should you care about this? Well, you should care about it if you use the internet at all, because the internet inherently just tracks what you're doing. And a VPN allows you to take control of your digital footprint online. Not only that, but it protects you if you're using public Wi-Fi a lot from getting hacked, which is incredible. And there's so many different servers around the world that you can always get fast internet speed. And they also don't data log. So if you're using the internet, which you are because you're watching this video, you obviously need a VPN, and who better than Nord? They gave me a coupon code, so if you want to use the code NothingButTech or go to NordVPN/NothingButTech, you can get 68% off your order, which is amazing. NordVPN is kind of knocking it out of the park, unlike the OnePlus Nord with this video quality right now. Let's talk a little bit more about this video quality. Thank you, Nord, for supporting me and the channel. Much appreciated. Love your service. All right, so you probably saw from that the audio and video quality isn't incredible. It definitely struggles with highlights. I have like a studio lighting setup going on right now, and that background's a bit darker. So where like my professional $3,500 camera can nail it, The phone cannot, obviously. And it's a similar story with the rear cameras as well. They're passable, they're fine, but they're not incredible. It has a 2 megapixel macro camera, which in concept seems dope, but in practice, it's just too low resolution that it's a little bit soft. And same thing actually with the ultra wide. In concept, it's really exciting that you can get an ultra wide on a €400 phone, but in practice, it's also a little soft. In order to really nail ultra wide, you need to have the resolution. Like, the resolution is actually super important because you're getting a wider view, and the OnePlus Nord's camera just doesn't have that. The photos aren't beautifully crisp or detail rich. They're not flagship quality, but they're actually pretty decent for a mid-range phone. Like, I could take a photo on this and post it and be okay most of the time, but I wouldn't recommend this phone to like an avid photographer. In better news, the battery life is super solid. So it has warp charge available and it lasts me all day, but as you probably expect, there is a cut here to save on price, and it's the fact that it doesn't have wireless charging. For me personally though, that's honestly not a huge deal. It's a nice luxury to have, but I don't need it. It's not like a necessity. And then we have the heavy hitters, like two fundamentals of any smartphone: performance and software. And it's mostly good news actually. So the software is supreme. I love, love, love Oxygen OS. It's so clean, but it has its features and it's well optimized, and there's guaranteed security and software updates, so that's all great news. The performance is also kind of a similar story in being pretty good news. It's definitely not like flagship level performance, but it does have a better chip than the Pixel 4a, and for the most part it feels pretty smooth. You mainly notice like the slowdowns or the waiting a beat when you have to open up like a bigger application, like the camera app for example, but in day-to-day stuff it's totally fine. Definitely a high point of the device, but not like a flagship level high point of the device. And that kind of leaves the OnePlus Nord in a confusing position because it doesn't specialize like a lot of mid-range phones do, like the Pixel 4a with its camera, but it also doesn't try to nail and strive to nail every single feature like the flagships do. It's somewhere in the middle of providing you every feature being pretty good, like being well-rounded but not excellent at anything. And that means that it's a little bit harder to find the perfect person to recommend this to. Like, for example, if someone came up to me and was like, budget phone, great camera, I'd be like, okay, Pixel 4a. Or if they came up to me and they were like, budget phone, fast, I would say, okay, iPhone SE2. But the OnePlus Nord does not have like that one quick sell feature. It's kind of like, do you want an overall pretty good phone that is definitely lesser than the flagships, but maybe the closest experience to it? Yes, get the OnePlus Nord. And I think that that's okay to be in that position, and I definitely think that they've done a great job with this phone, but it is by no means a flagship killer. It's not like a 2016 OnePlus flagship. If you want to see my review of that phone with the excellent camera, the Pixel 4a, there's actually more to it than that, so you can check out my full review right here. I did also review the iPhone SE2, you can check that out here. Thank you so much for watching this video and for your time and your support. I have a huge announcement coming in like a week or two, so get ready. Thank you NordVPN for sponsoring this video and for your support of the channel. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.